A man who needs no introduction. Chad Nelson, longtime Surfrider volunteer and CEO.
I was grad student intern.
And grad student intern.
Many years ago.
I'm sure you've all seen him on many of the amazing webinars he's put on, all the towns, all of it. So take it away, Chad.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to be out at the chapter conferences again. Raise your hand if this is your first chapter conference. Yeah, that's pretty good. Raise your hand if you've been to more than 2. Raise your hand if you've been to more than 10. Yeah. I did the math, and I think Ed and I have probably been to 100 over the last 25 years we've been doing this. But great. We have new energy in the room, and we have a bunch of veterans and a bunch of people in the middle. I'm going to give you guys a big picture of what Surfrider's kind of looking at from the national level. We have over 200 chapters and clubs now, and to Mike, to your point, there's over 140 high school and college clubs. It's been the biggest part of our network that's growing. It's really awesome to see. And kind of, the solutions to eco-anxiety that Jen talked about, some of those are vision. I'll talk about that. Some of those are taking small steps, which is, if you're doing good campaign planning, you're organizing your work into incremental steps. Some of that's community and some of that's commitment. We have all those things. I think in many ways, Surfrider, and we have great community. We really can be an antidote to some of that eco-anxiety. And I find that in our network, it's pretty optimistic because we're out there making stuff happen and getting things done. So I'm going to talk about our impact, some solutions, and then where Surfrider is growing. This was the, talk about getting results. This was our coastal victory, our #1 sort of impact measurement, which is, are we winning our campaigns? Are we getting official decisions made in the favor of the coastal environment? Last year, we had 83 coastal victories. You can see down here in the lower left, this is pipe, so that's plastics. This is a mix of our other initiatives we work on. This is local, this is state, federal. So we have a call every month with the network, the staff, and we tally up the victories. So we're seeing 5, 6 on average coastal victories a month. Every month, Surfrider's making stuff happen. And you can kind of see where they are around the country. This is what that looks like. This is maybe, I think maybe I'm almost up to date. I put this up maybe a week or 2 ago. There's 43 now. That's how fast they're happening. And you can see a similar trend. A lot of plastics, a mix of the others, a lot of local and a fair amount of state victories. One of the things that's really notable, so this is kind of what that number of victories looks like over time. It's generally growing. This is, we don't have total control of the politics and all the places we work. Obviously 2020, we saw a bit of a dip with COVID, but the trend is generally up. One of the things that's really notable is the amount of victories we're having at the state level is skyrocketing. So we're trying to scale our work from local influence to state influence, and we're seeing that happen pretty dramatically. And if you think about it, depending on where you live, if you pass a bag ban in a city, you maybe affect thousands of people or tens of thousands of people. If you pass a state level bag ban, now you're talking about millions of people. And if we can get a federal bag ban, then we're talking about affecting hundreds of millions of people in terms of impact. So one of the things we're trying to do is scale our impact by working locally and getting that up to the state level. And we're doing that as an organization quite well. This is also just some stats on our beach cleanups, bread and butter work at the Surfrider Foundation. Over the last couple of years, we've been working to aggregate that data. So we used to just clean the beach for the sake of cleaning the beach. It's a great recruiting and organizing tool. When you ask people how they got involved with Surfrider, it's most often they showed up at a beach cleanup. But now we're starting to collect data on where we're cleaning up and what we're finding on the beach. Now it's a community science project, and we can use that to start influencing our policies. So that's also been really notable to see all that community science coming in on beach cleanups, which is cool to see happening. And we've been growing our impact. We're a national and global leader on plastic pollution issues. Jen Savage was with Melissa Gates from our Northeast chapter. We're in Korea at the International Marine Debris Conference last week or the week before, presenting on global work. We've passed over 300 laws and policies across the United States, more than any other organization in the United States by a long shot. We have the Better Beach Alliance, which is the beach cleanup. So a lot of growth at Surfrider is improving our impact. We've got Ryan and now Carolyn Curtin running the, helping with that club program. And we'll hear from Steph, I think, virtually on our coast and climate work. We have a job out there right now, a climate action coordinator to help do coastal resilience projects, plant dunes like the beautiful dunes we have here, and wetland and other blue carbon projects. And so we've been really growing our capacity to support the network around the country. And last year, after having a fair amount of success with the organization, we took a pause and said, okay, what are we doing? Like, where are we headed? What's going on? We're passing bag bans. We're getting these more comprehensive plastic bans. We're having success, with our victory count, with our network. What are we actually trying to accomplish? And so we spent a year working on a strategic plan. And the mantra for that strategic plan was, let's take a quantum leap to defend and protect our beloved coast for all people always. This was the mantra for the strategic plan. Like, how do we take that next big step up as an organization? And that planning process, raise your hand if you were engaged in that or involved. So yeah, it's some of you. It was highly participatory. We had tons of our chapters and clubs. We focused on core values, our commitment, which I'll talk more about, to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Came up with a bunch of key insights. We centered it around climate change because that is the 600-pound gorilla in the room. It's affecting every issue we work on and everything in the globe. It was solution-oriented and it called for growth. It ultimately said, hey, we want to build expertise, influence, and power to set the national agenda on 3 issues we really care about: climate change and how it's impacting the coasts, plastic pollution, and clean water. We know we need to build more power and influence. We need to expand the impact of our network to get to the point where we can actually start influencing that national agenda. We're starting to do that. I mean, we helped author the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, the federal bill. So that's happening. It's great to see. Yeah, we haven't passed it yet, but we're chipping away at it. We also know we need to get significantly more people involved in our organization if we're going to have that power. And to do all those things, we need more capacity. The plan basically has 4 big goals. Figure out how to respond to climate change. Sea level rise is coming to our coasts no matter what we do. We stop pumping carbon into the atmosphere tomorrow. We've got 1,000 years of sea level rise coming. So we need to figure out how to adapt to that along our coastlines. We can get rid of single-use consumer product goods plastics in the United States in the next decade. Like, we know we can do that. We can just get that stuff out of the system. And so we've set our goal in doing that. So now we have a target for all those laws that we're passing. California this last year just passed a really pretty big plastic ban under the term extended producer responsibility, which is putting the burden of the plastic production on the companies that are producing it instead of on us to deal with it. So we're starting to make really significant impact on that. We need to scale that to the national level. And then with clean water, tying it back to climate change, when we're seeing these storms and these floods, this just happened to Florida. Climate change is overwhelming the infrastructure that we put in for clean water. So we're seeing sewer spills and wastewater spills, flooding in our infrastructure. So a big emphasis on clean water is not only urban runoff and water testing, but also trying to improve the infrastructure for all the wastewater treatment plants, all that unglamorous stuff that we take for granted that keeps our water clean and our drinking water clean as well, and maintains our health. And we're going to do that through expanding our network, getting more youth involved, and diversifying our networks with more people engaged in Surfrider. The 1 Million Voices campaign, part of this is really ultimately about getting more people engaged in the movement. And we're going to measure that with three groups. Volunteers, I'll talk a little bit more about the Golden app, but trying to get more volunteers, which is always the #1 thing our chapters need, recruiting more volunteers. We need to get more members, people contributing financially, and also just signing up gives us political power, and more e-activists, which is a great, sort of gateway into the organization. So we'll be, doing that through our chapters and clubs, through our memberships, through volunteers, online activists, and really trying to drive recruitment at all levels of the organization. We'll talk more about the digital transformation. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We've made a lot of efforts to improve our ability to collect, retain members and activists and volunteers to help you guys ultimately have stronger chapters and have us have a stronger organization as a whole. And then I'll share this. This kind of theory of change, which is build power in the grassroots communities, scale it up to the states, and get that up to the national level, is a proven model for social change in the United States. This is a really great article that was published in Bloomberg. This graph is from it, and it's tracking the pace of social change across issues like the right to vote, gay marriage, abortion, which is obviously we've had a huge setback on, but we'll continue to work on cannabis legalization. And if you look at this paper, there was 3 things that ultimately drove all of those changes. It was grassroots activism and state level policies. Gay marriage went state by state by state. Legal strategy, we have an incredibly strong legal team at Surfrider, and shifting culture, which is something we actually do with our network all the time. Look at all the single-use, our water bottles that we use, getting rid of single-use plastics, education and outreach we do through our network. If you go to a college campus now, every single kid has a reusable water bottle on their backpack. So that's like become the norm, not the exception. So I can share this around, but it's a really interesting. So this is just sort of proof that the model that we're using at Surfrider to create big social change is not new. It's well proven. So how are we going to succeed at these big goals in our strategic plan? One thing is we have a model and we know it works. We build campaigns, we break them down into little steps, we celebrate those victories, and we have over 820 coastal victories over the last decade and a half, increasing state wins, which I talked about. And we do that through community building, through our programs, and through our advocacy, and getting those 3 things tied together. So outreach at chapter meetings, encouraging people to come to your beach cleanups or your water testing or your ocean-friendly restaurants program, and then using that momentum to run campaigns and pass policies is what worked. I bolded community building because I think coming out of COVID, one of the things we really need to work on is thinking about and brainstorming about how to get people back out into our chapter networks. I was just in the Hawaii chapter conference 2 weeks ago. Same challenge there. So I think across our network, we've done a really good job surviving and somewhat thriving through COVID. And I think the next challenge is in this kind of quasi post-COVID, if that's where we're at. I'm not sure we are, but effort is trying to get people back out into our network. So I don't think that's unusual here. I think all of our chapters are like, we've had attrition. People are kind of doing their own thing again. How do we get them back out? And so, another big focus over the last year has been our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. For the last 3 or 4 years, this is something that Surfrider is really committed to. We have a committee that's set up. That's our board, our staff, our chapter network, and our clubs. So we're trying to integrate this work through the entire organization. We put together this pretty long why statement that was a kind of a foundational piece of work that committee worked on. And there's a video on ChapterNet that talks about this with Adriana Estrada, our board chair. So why is Surfrider spending this time and energy to do this work? And I would summarize it in sort of 3 things. One, it's the right thing to do. It's long overdue that we do this work. It's going to make us smarter and more thoughtful because the more different perspectives we have sharing in our work, the smarter we're going to be. We won't be we'll lose those blind spots. We'll just be better at the work we do. And it's ultimately also going to make us a stronger organization, a more effective and more powerful organization if we have a bigger tent and are more inclusive. So, it's pretty straightforward. This is a lot of words that basically says those three things. And obviously tons and tons of work to do to get there. We've really just started the journey, but we're starting to see some improvements. I would argue that, so we have a bunch of people working on this at Surfrider, and the work kind of is internal and external, I would argue. So internal work is trying to diversify our staff and our board. We've set up hiring practices to try to seek more diversity in our work and our contractors. We've looked at pay equality across the organization, tons of learning resources. There's a tremendous amount of stuff on ChapterNet. If you go there, raise your hand. Do you guys know about ChapterNet? Do you use ChapterNet? Okay, good. There were times when you do that and one person would raise their hand. So it's always good to know that's actually being used. So a lot of work that we need to do to be better at this work, learn and understand what's going on. And then there's external practices, getting that out to them. And, there's more than this. These are just a couple, but, creating visibility and celebrating diversity in our network. One of the things that's been really interesting is we've actually been what I would argue, a passively inclusive organization. If you want to come and volunteer your time to help us, we never say no, because we're always looking for volunteers to come help. And as a result of that, we actually have had people of color, we've had indigenous folks, we've had LGBTQ people involved in Surfrider. We just didn't really ever celebrate the fact that those people are bold to come into an organization that's like largely white and hetero and historically male dominated. So they're the brave people that did that. And in celebrating that diversity through our communications, we're actually attracting a lot more people. Oh, wow, you guys are a welcoming organization. Great. So that's been successful. And then partnerships and coalitions and outreach. The next thing is, how do we get out there? In the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of opportunity to work with the tribes, for example. And that's going to be ongoing for a long time. But I wanted to highlight it because I think it is really important work for us to do, and it's stretching us and challenging us, but it's going to make us stronger. And then last is increasing our capacity for impact. Part of that's this digital transformation project, which is the overhaul of the email and HubSpot and Golden, the volunteer app. And we recognize that this is, it's difficult and a pain in the neck to shift systems and learn new things. We hired Zakia, who you'll hear from later, specifically to help the Adapter Network do this work, and she's extraordinary. And so we're like, hey, we're not going to put this burden on the Chapter Network without trying to provide you guys some help and some resources. The goal here is to ultimately increase our effectiveness and our efficiency, become a customer-oriented organization. Like, sadly, love it or hate it, we live in the world of Amazon, where everyone wants to be fed exactly what they want, click a button and get it. And if they don't, they get frustrated and they won't participate. So we've had clunky systems in the past. And recruit more volunteers. We know this is like the #1 challenge for our network. There's two big pieces of technology. There's a lot behind the scenes. One is this volunteer app, Golden. One of the things I ask all the chapters is, who has a beach cleanup box or Tupperware somewhere in their storage facility or in somebody's garage, and it's got this like clipboard on it, and there's a bunch of names written on that clipboard from people who showed up at beach cleanups over the last 3 years that have never left the clipboard. They're not in any email, like every chapter has one of those. So imagine, we actually had people like drive out to a beach cleanup on a Saturday morning, give us their email, and this is what most for-profit companies would die for that email. They'd spend $100 for that email, and we're just like, throw it away. Because it's a pain in the neck. Who's gonna, after running a beach cleanup, gonna be like, hey, it's Saturday afternoon, I think I'm gonna sit down and input a bunch of emails. Nobody wants to do this. So the idea between the Golden app is to make that process digital and be able to recruit volunteers and then have them show up and check in. So it's going to gamify volunteering. It's like Strava for volunteer activism or whatever, your 10,000 steps. So, we're convinced that that's going to make a big difference. I was talking to Spencer Campbell, our development director, and we've had, since we implemented it in the spring, we've had 15,000 people come into Golden. Most of them are new. 17,000. So now we can actually communicate back to those people and say, hey, thank you for showing up and volunteering at Surfrider. Join or come to our next event. So we think that's going to increase volunteer return. And then HubSpot, it's email and web page. Our email system, the chapters had an email system. MailChimp, Surfrider had a different, headquarters had a different one. We had 2 different lists for a decade. We were complaining about whether or not people were on the list or not. It's now all in one. So our list is your list is our list. So that's going to increase capacity too. So we're pretty excited about this. It was also really clunky before. The systems that we had to use to get all the pieces working. We were trying to exchange emails, things were getting lost. And now we have a system where it's all in one place. So if someone's a member of Surfrider and they come and show up at a beach cleanup and volunteer, it'll be in their membership information in the membership system. So as we get more sophisticated with the tools, you can start emailing people who are regular participants in beach cleanups or love ocean-friendly restaurants, or you can target them because they took action on your statewide plastic bill and they're interested in those issues. So all the information for our volunteers and our activists is now all going to be in one place and also accessible to you. So we recognize the pain of new systems, but I think once we get on the other side of that, it's going to be better tools for communicating and recruiting and talking to volunteers. And then last is organizational growth. Who recognizes this guy? Who is he? Yvon Chouinard. Why was he in the news last week? Gave away his company, right? $3 billion. Why was that so significant?
Sets the precedence for other companies.
Yeah, but like, what did he give? Right, but he gave money. Right, he gave money. He was like, hey, what's the thing I can give to fuel the movement, right? And so it's just, he's a hero for it. And he was actually one of the founding supporters of Surfrider, which is also kind of cool. But and the reason I bring him up is like, whether we like it or not, and we are a volunteer organization, it is money that drives the ability to have capacity and get stuff done. So like unfortunate reality of Surfriders, we've got to raise money to hire all these great staff and support events like this and build these tools that we have. And that's something we're doing at Surfrider. Our revenue has been growing pretty significantly over the last 5 years at Surfrider, which is great. And we pour that money right back into activist support. I'll show you a slide in a second. We're still playing catch up on that in terms of trying to support our network. Pacific Northwest is unusually well-resourced, that you have a policy person like Charlie and Gus and field organizers like Liz and Bree to support the network. There's parts of our network that don't have either. So we're trying to grow more revenue and provide more staff, whether it's the initiative experts, people like Katie Day, folks like Zakia to support you, or the regional staff. We're also trying to adapt to growth. Perfect. I'll be done in a couple minutes. As the organization, we've gone from 40 staff to 75 staff. We've gone from 45 chapters to 200 chapters and clubs. So the network's expanding. And as a result of that, we're also having to figure out how to be more systemic with our work, thus this digital transformation, provide more structure and consistency, and a little bit less rule breaking, going it alone, and inconsistency. If everyone in our network's doing everything differently, it's absolutely going to kill us. An example of this that we did a little while back was unifying the logo across the organization, which has had really strong results already in terms of our recognition and our visibility and our membership and everything else. So yeah, this is just a quick example. Our strategic plan calls us to go from 81 chapters to 125, from 130 clubs to 400, build our programs and our initiatives, and really support our network. So the circles on this map, they're actually dated because it's an old map. So it says, I think there's 7 chapters in Oregon now. This one says 5. But the blue states, regions and states, the dark blue ones have a policy person. They're fully resourced on the ground. We know if we have one field organizer to 6 chapters, it's a great ratio. In some places like California, we have 18 chapters and we have 1 person, hopefully 2 soon, supporting them. Texas, the Southeast, the Great Lakes have no staff at all. So really what we want to do is support all of our chapters in all of those places. And we also want to make them more powerful because they're the states that are not passing state laws because they don't have the connection between the grassroots and the policy work. And we need those places to achieve our national goals too. A great case study of that is, we were fighting offshore drilling against the Trump administration, and we were mobilizing our network all across the country. He wanted to open up drilling at all coasts. There was so much great activism here and here with our network and our coalition partners that at the end of the election, Trump was trying to actually set state moratoriums, which he didn't have a legal ability to do, but he was trying to flip the script on oil drilling because we made it so unpopular at the grassroots level in red states. So it just shows you what we're capable of doing if we support all these places. So we're launching something called the Ocean Solutions Campaign. We're doing the background work on this right now. It's a big fundraising initiative to build more capacity to meet the goals of the strategic plan and all those big goals we set up and raise significant money to be able to do that. We're in the behind the scenes stages of figuring out what that's going to look like. But you'll hear about this probably in the new year when we sort of launch it publicly, and we'll be talking about trying to get out there and raise more money to support the network. That's it. This is a picture from DC from right before the apocalypse. We shook 1,000 hands, and and somehow nobody got COVID. It was amazing. This was in late February. It was awesome to see almost 200 of our activists and volunteers all across the country out talking to their local reps on common issues across the network. We'll be back, assuming we don't have some other setback in late February or March, and we encourage you to think about that. We'll be rallying the national network in DC to protect our ocean waves and beaches. So that's it. Thanks.